Johnson, and this is focused on Liberia. Hit it! From Cape Mount to Cape Palmer, Mount Nimba to Atlantic Ocean, Obomi Hills to Pocondre, to educate, elevate, and promote. Talk about home affairs, in diaspora, current affairs, reliable information, history, talking about culture, politics, education, entertainment, business, sports, advertisement, articulation. Focus on Liberia. Focus on Liberia. Focus on Liberia. From Monday to Sunday.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to FOL Marketplace, where we talk business, economic, finance, and everything in between. Today, I'm a guest host trying to co-host with the me man, Gabriel Carter. Welcome, Gabriel.
Dennis, good to be here.
Thank you. Let me also welcome somebody who did something in the government. What we are about to talk today, he got your fingerprints on it. Let me welcome our public financial term.
Thank you, Dennis. Good to be here on a Saturday.
Yeah, Saturday is not easy to be here. I mean, I have Gabriel was in the gym. We have to literally pull him from there. We have Professor James Tamba in the background. He still have some connection issue there, trying to fix that. And we also have Percy Harris, who's going to be on shortly. We want to welcome all our viewers from across the globe. This Saturday is time for FOL Marketplace. Today, we're going to be discussing value-added tax. There's a new tax system that is coming to Liberia. So, value-added tax will be replacing the goods and services taxes. And how we know that? In the paper, it was published day before yesterday, and I read from front page, President Joseph Boakai has proposed amending Chapter 10 of the Liberian Revenue Code, advocating for the adoption of value-added tax VAT to replace the current goods and services tax regime. In a letter addressed to House Speaker Funati Kofa, President Boakai said implementing VAT will enhance tax compliance and boost revenue generation. By the adoption of VAT, the president said, the government of Liberia intends to use it as a catalyst for improving Liberia's tax system in response to the increasing need to improve tax compliance and hence maximize revenue generation for national development. That came from President Joseph Newman Boakai. Well, this is not new. It started with the WIA administration. There was this press release, January 13, 2022, signed by former Minister Samuel Tuet. It says, the government of Liberia through the Ministry of Finance and Development Planning announces the commencement of additional stakeholder engagement on the transition from the goods and services tax to value-added tax. In order to boost revenue and enhance transparency and accountability, as well as spur development across the country, the government of Liberia, under the leadership of President Weah, announces its readiness to commence a roadmap that will culminate in the introduction of VAT as a replacement of goods and services tax. Intense consultation with range of stakeholders will precede the introduction of VAT. It continues, the introduction of VAT is in consonant with regional commitments of ECOWAS member states. It has been chosen as a common tax for the sub-region in order to encourage an increase in sub-regional trade in non-discriminatory basis. Liberia, as it stands, is the only country in the sub-region that is either not VAT compliant or not yet on the path to being VAT compliant. So we've brought these men together so we can talk about this value-added tax to replace goods and services tax. Also, as I was researching, I saw on the LRA, they did a whole lot of training on these things. But let me give chance to the people who understand this. The reason they brought me here because I don't have much idea, so I will be asking some dumb questions that will make people to understand and get it better. So let's start by saying, let's get the background here. Let me start with Gabriel on this whole tax system. We have value-added tax, GST, sales tax, and all the tax. So give me the background on taxes and the forms of taxes that people do. What is this value-added? What is GST and all that? So let me give the two of you a chance to give me, our audience, a very brief summary.
Okay, so I'll take a stab and then I'll put this over to Thomas since he did a lot of work on this. So, maybe just start with this. When I read the press conference, I was a little taken aback in terms of the fact that the recommendation came from the World Bank and USAID, and because of that, we jumped on it. One, I think from our conversation behind the scene was that there's a white paper out there. White paper is supposed to mean some kind of research in terms of whether that recommendation, we did our own research, whether that is, kind of beneficial to the country to transition from what we currently have to value-added tax, right? But I was a little taken aback because I think what could have happened this whole where you get recommendation from the World Bank or the USAID and without even looking further into it, you jump into it without much further research. I think it's something.
Sorry to interrupt. We'll come to the details.
Right.
I wanted to lay the premise here. When I was researching, they say, well, so I said, but what is all this tax about? They
Right.
say there are two types of taxes. There's a direct tax and there's indirect.
Right.
So the direct tax is, explain, give me the background.
So direct taxes are basically, let's say I purchase something from you, I pay taxes on it, that goes to the government. Indirect tax is pretty much on the services after. Let's say if I buy a car, whatever tax I pay on that car, that's direct tax. Whether it's a used or new car, that's direct. Indirect, in another sense, is if something happens to that vehicle and I go service it, right? Every time I go service it, there's supposed to be a tax paid on the servicing or the maintenance of that vehicle to service it, right? Those are indirect taxes, right? Mm-hmm. Currently, as GST, they collect on the direct taxes, whether in the sales of goods or services, right? So, however, GST does not collect on the indirect part of it. So if you buy a car in Liberia, you pay tax, right? However, when something happens to that vehicle, you go bring it to a mechanic shop to fix it, whether, the mechanic right on the side of the road or official mechanic, you don't pay service taxes on that. There's no taxes currently being, collected. Right. Whereas what that's supposed to do is make it, I hate using that word, which is broad-based, make it continuous in the sense that if you buy a car, you pay taxes on it, but every time you service that vehicle, a tire breaks or anything breaks on it, you go to the mechanic shop to fix it, you're going to continue to pay taxes on it, right? So that's the biggest difference between the two, right? So I will leave it right there for now. Yeah.
Thank you. Let me welcome Mr. James Tamba. Is off camera there. Mr. Tamba, are you on?
Yes, I am.
All right. Thank you. So let me go to Thomas to give us more background on GST and VAT. What do you mean? How are they different?
Thank you, Dennis. Before I come to the difference here, let me just talk broadly about taxes. Taxes are normally what we transfer from us as citizens, whether in the private sector or whatever sector you work in. It's a transfer that we make from us as citizens to the government for the government to deliver services. So we want the government to pave road. We want the government to build schools. We normally transfer money to the government for the government to deliver those services so that we benefit from it as citizens. So normally, for that to happen, there has to be a legal instrument in place that gives the government the authority to collect that money from us. So this is where you have the constitution coming in. It gives authority to the government to collect revenue. And then you have specific other instruments, like you read in the release, the revenue code. So the revenue code for every county defines what a tax is, how it can be collected, who can collect it. It is that law that guides the tax collection processes in the country. And then when it comes to revenue, revenue is a broad definition of what the government collects. Not every revenue that the government collects is actually taxes. There are some revenue that the government collects that are fees, for instance. Like you go to register a case, the police will say, give us $10, or register your case with $15 in the code. You go to register your vehicle, like Gabriel was saying, it's not really a tax that you pay, but it's a fee that you pay for the service that you get. The difference between taxes and these fees that we pay is that when you pay a fee, it's not compulsory. You pay for it because you want it as an individual. So I buy a car, I want to register it. You pay the money for the license plate, they give it to you. So that one, those who want it will go for it. But for a tax, it's compulsory. You pay. So that's broadly revenue, that's taxes. On the issue of direct and indirect taxes are taxes that you pay mostly on income. Like when you work as an employee, the money that gets deducted from your monthly salary and sent to the IRS is a direct tax. It's put on your labor. So you work, collect the tax from you. Also on profit, corporate income taxes. Businesses make business. At the end, when they make profit, it's an income. So they have to send portion of that income to the government. Indirect taxes are mostly for consumption. They are mostly consumption taxes. Yeah. So you go to the supermarket, you buy apple, you pay tax on it because you are consuming it. So these are indirect taxes. So VAT is broadly a consumption tax. You pay on goods and services. You go to a restaurant, you eat, you will pay the tax. So the difference between value-added tax and goods and services tax is that all of them are under the family of consumption taxes. But the goods and services tax is a single stage tax. That means it is collected at the final point of the transaction. So when you go to the restaurant to eat, when you finish eating, then they say, in addition to what you need to pay 10% tax. So it's at that final stage that is collected from the consumer. The value-added tax tweaks it, like modify the system to say, we are going to collect the tax based on the value that is added at any specific point of the production of the final service that you get at the end.
Continuously.
Yeah. So say the meal that you have in the restaurant when you get there, somebody goes to the ocean and collect the shrimp that you go and eat. Then the other person is going to open a company maybe that will store that shrimp for some time before the restaurant can go and buy it from them. So they're adding value by conserving it so that it doesn't spoil. So when they conserve it, they add value to it in the sense that they will employ labor and employ and use some capital to be able to store it. So under value-added tax, those who are also doing that along that value chain, it will be collected from them. So essentially, the value that you add is the amount that you sell the service for or the good for minus the input cost, how much you pay for that capital and the labor. So what the government does is that along the value chain, when you add value at point A, you pay a little portion of tax. You add value at point B, you pay a little portion of tax. But in the end, it is actually the final consumer that pay all of that tax. But those people who are along the value chain, the government will like tax them based on what the rate is. So essentially what is happening in Liberia is that we are just replacing one consumption tax with the other. So it's not a new tax. We are saying we're adding VAT on top of GST. We're just replacing GST with VAT.
Let me hear from Mr. Tamba. James.
Yes, I couldn't agree with Thomas more. This is basically, it's like changing one share to another for the same occasion. That's about it. You know, changing the GST to VA. That's it. All of them are, or both of them are, consumption tax. I'm surprised the indicator in one of their writing that this is not going to add anything to the consumer. I don't believe it.
No.
I mean, the consumer is going to be the one to pay. Whenever you have a tax that is at the point of sale, who pays? It's the consumer, right?
Yeah.
Whenever the tax is levied at the point of sale, indeed, the consumer is responsible, not the government. So if the consumer is not responsible, then how will they collect the money anyway? So it is the consumer that will bear the consequences. My question is, did they think it through? Are our people ready and prepared to undertake a new situation of this nature where they train? Are they educated? How will they look at it? This, tax is psychological, in my view. I mean, the moment the person hears tax, they freak out. So you have to educate them. Even if it's going to be 1%, they need to know what it is being collected for, how will it be used. And then, of course, Thomas mentioned the fact that there is illegality involved. The legislature must pass an act that will bring into bear this tax. Has that been done?
Right.
Those are the questions that have come to mind.
Thank you. And we'll go into, because if we're replacing, as you said, one share with the other share, we want to know why this new share, okay? What is the benefit of replacing
Indeed.
VAT with, or the GST with VAT? But before we get to that point, let's talk about the GST, what that we're currently doing now. What is it? How does it look like? Who collects it? How much we're paying? Let's talk briefly. So when we understand it better, then when we try to understand VAT now, then we can know why the replacement. So what is GST? Let's say, on rice, we eat rice, bag of rice. How do we pay taxes right now on a GST? Thomas, I want you to start with that and then Gabriel continues.
Yeah, so maybe I can pull out the information on how much we've collected from GST over the past maybe 5 to 6 years when the next speaker is speaking. But I mean, the tax is basically what the name is. So it's a goods and a service tax. So if you import rice into Liberia, for instance, you pay different type of taxes on it. You have to pay import duties, which is a trade-related tax.
Yep.
So you are going to pay that tax at the point of bringing the commodity into the country. So you pay it at the port. These are trade taxes. You pay that.
Because I get a rice store. So I have a rice store. I import rice. I pay at Freeport.
At the port.
Yes, yeah. You pay at the port. So essentially,
Okay, but the person at my enter, in Nuclear Town is not paying that tax. Is the
no, the thing about taxes is that even though we say it's the businesses that pay, but they are also getting their revenue from the consumer.
right,
Because in the end, they are going to transfer it to what the consumer is paying. So what governments all over the world do is that they sit to places where transactions are taking place and they collect the money from there.
Yeah.
So trade taxes, for instance, you collect it at the port, at the border. When you bring in things from Guinea, right at Ghana border, then you will pay the trade taxes before you come in. And just
so the rest of owner pay that tax at Freeport. You bring it home now.
Yeah,
and the dweller people market will may come to you.
Yeah.
So when they buy that bag of rice, are they paying taxes to you?
The GST is paid now internally. The rest has entered the country.
Right.
You go and sell it to wholesalers. You add a little bit of profit margin to it. Maybe you bought the rice $10, you brought it into the country, then you sell it $12.
Yeah.
So the GST now is that goods tax that is paid. The wholesaler will buy it, and then eventually it will go to sign your county, and the final consumer will buy it. And so the government says that 10% will be paid as a goods tax on this rice that has come into the country. So in the end, you will see that the price of rice will go up by a little margin because of that tax that has been imposed on it.
So when a wholesaler buys it from Mamadi and Sons, he or she pay tax on that.
Yes.
When they ship it to Sino and they buy it there, that person too is paying tax.
Paying tax, yeah.
So then they cup it right because they say by cup. So
Yeah.
when I go to the Jamaica Road Market now to buy it, I'm still paying tax on that
No,
cup of rice.
copper rice.
Yes, you are actually essentially that tax that you are paying is the wholesaler, the retailer, every tax that they have paid, they will transfer it to that cup of rice and you will pay.
Okay.
And what is happening under the VAT is that no, I'm not coming to VAT here. Depending on the method that will be used, there will be some adjustment that will be done. The price that the tax that the wholesaler pay, they will adjust it with the price that the retailer is paying, but we'll get to discuss that. But on the current GST, essentially what is happening is that the government will relax all that process. I'm not going to follow how the retailer buy the retailer, the wholesaler, and all of that. I'm just going to wait. When you go to the market, you go to Douala market to buy the cup of rice, you will pay the tax. And then the government will collect that tax from those people who were involved in the selling to the final consumer. So it is a final point of sale tax. So it's a single stage. That's what we are doing right now. And then on the service side, you go to restaurant in Liberia. For them, they don't distinguish between like it's done in the US. They don't tell you, say your tax is this. They will just charge you an overall price for what you eat in the restaurant or the service the keke driver provides to you. But there's a component there that is a tax. So you have the goods side and then you have the service side. But it's based on the percentage that is levied. It used to be 10% for a little while in Liberia. But then when this whole VAT issue was coming, the thought in the Ministry of Finance was that in advance of the introduction of VAT, we start to expand the GST tax base and we try to increase the rate gradually. So in the current budget law, you will see that in 2020, last year, the GST was increased from 10% to 11%. So that eventually when VAT comes, the rate cannot be that far. And I just wanted to point out that Liberia signed the agreement to introduce VAT in 2009. So this is not entirely something that was started by George Weah government. We've been working on this since 2009. There has been a lot of training in the LRA, in the Ministry of Finance on how we can do this. ECOWAS has been helping us. So those development partners that Gabriel mentioned, USAID and World Bank, they simply came to help us do what we said we were going to do in 2009. And in terms of the history, it started actually in 1954. VAT started in 1954 in France. And then right now, there are over 160 countries that are implementing VAT.
Yeah. And I absolutely agree with what Thomas said. I think for me, the advantage that GST has right now is it's limited in its how the taxes are collected on it. Whereas without even trying to go into VAT, VAT will be more as I said earlier, continuous. But VAT, I mean GST right now is uh, import based. So when you have the product come in, when it's sold at the second time, as you said, from Dualo shop to the retailer, right? But in terms of going to, let's say if you take, let's say you're somebody who said in Douala market, you buy a lot of rice and sell it by a cup. There's no, currently GST is limited in terms of imposing taxes on the consumer that come in to buy from you there. I think that's the biggest limitation on that. That they're trying to do away with. Now, as far as the current government,
hold on, let me understand. You said so the person who buying the cup of rice at Douala
yeah,
market is not paying tax?
no, there's no such thing. Right now, in terms of physically being collected, right? When you go and you can see that, so even when you go to the market to go buy, physically, there's nothing that says the same thing goes with the service as well. So when you go buy food in the store, right? there is not really a tax, even though it is higher, to kind of include it on there, but it's not really kind of stated, right? So that's the limitation on GST right now as it stands. Whereas with the introduction, there will be a continuous, even though they're going to make adjustment to make it easy on supposedly on the consumer, it's going to be continuous. So you buy the rice, when you bring the rice in, there's going to be import taxes. If you sell it to either wholesaler or retailer, they're going to be taxes. If that wholesaler or retailer go and sells it to, by a cup or even to another retailer, there's going to be taxes. So it's going to be continuous at every point. That's the biggest advantage with that. Whereas currently as GST, it is in a way kind of limited. And I think the biggest word that I think that we should be focusing on is what does this broad base actually encompasses. And I think Thomas touched a little bit on that in terms of what it's going to be. But I think that's the limitation of the, if you want to call it that, the GST. But from the consumer side, I think that's the biggest advantage to them because they don't have to pay too much taxes. Whereas this one will be, the VAT will be continuously imposed upon them.
Thomas doesn't seem like he. Anyway, we'll come to the different, Mr. Tamba. So if the person at Douala is who's selling the cup of rice to me on a GST, and I'm paying taxes on it, how do they send that tax back to government? To the
Well, that is the irony.
Right.
That's the irony. The person, the Oma at Raleigh Market. How does he collect this, or does she collect this tax and send it back to government? Sometimes when I was traveling, when I was in Sierra Leone, I thought about this very, very carefully, and I said to myself, what impact does this tax? They have the same thing in Sierra Leone. Exactly. And I said, I went to the market and I went to 4-5 Omans, and I said, okay, how are they collecting this tax? Is it because the way they string their cup? How they benefit from this tax? So I started looking under the cup to see, and some of them knock their cup in so that it won't take so much rice, so that they can recoup what has been transferred to them by the wholesaler. That's why I came to. So it's difficult for them to collect. But all in all, what we are talking about here is what we call in economics macro decision. It is not, it is a macroeconomic policy. And in macroeconomic policy, it's not taken lightly and quickly as they have done it. Macroeconomic policy, whenever it is enforced or enacted, or if the policy is written, it has to be taught to the masses of the people. The government, all the players, all the stakeholders they have to be informed and they have to play a role. If it is a macroeconomic, then of course the legislature or the Senate, the Liberian legislature for that matter, must do something about it. And it must be signed into law. Have they done that? No, in my opinion, no. And until this education is done so that our masses can know exactly what they are getting into, what the benefits will be to them, what the collection will be like, will there be benchmark with respect to enforcement on the part of the wholesaler and the retailer? What percentage can they assess? Those things have to be worked out in my mind. But I think what they're trying to do from reading their manifesto, I think they're trying to level themselves with or equate themselves with member countries of ECOWAS. Because many member countries of ECOWAS have done away with this. And I think they are also trying to follow suit, in my opinion.
So, and that's the one. So let's come to VAT.
Let
right?
me, Dennis, let me make a point.
Yeah.
So you were asking earlier, how do we collect taxes from the people who sell cups of rice in a market, right?
Yeah.
what you do in in tax administration is, tax compliance comes with a cost.
Mhm.
Because if we say we are going to go to all the markets in Liberia to collect taxes from those who are selling cup of rice, it's costing additional money to collect that revenue.
Mhm.
So we can't go to all the markets in Liberia and go to Sino, go to Rewarding, all over and collect taxes from those people who are doing that kind of micro level
So there,
transaction.
so
So
there
what
is
you
Correct.
do, what you do is that you collect the taxes from the retailer at the point where they are buying that bag of rice to go and sell it by cup. The taxes are collected at that point. And the business that is doing the retail is a registered business in the Liberia Business Registry. The Liberia Revenue Authority can track them and collect taxes from them. So that means the person who is going to sell the rice by cup will have already paid the tax as portion of the rice that they have paid for. Because there is absolutely no way LRA will go all over and collect these taxes. So in terms of tax compliance, you you don't go to everybody. This is why you do it strategically and say, at this point, I will collect it from this group. And then everybody falling down the line will have already paid the tax. On the issue of Sierra Leone and those countries that are doing it, whether VAT is introduced or not, you go to the market and people who sell by rice, you will not see it, because normally the way it is done under VAT is that you set a threshold and say, based on this threshold, any business that is making a profit of this amount of dollars will have to register for VAT. Because when you go to the LRA, the composition of businesses they have there, they have large businesses, they have medium businesses, and they have small businesses. And that categorization of businesses is based on turnover, the profit that you are making annually. So it will be based on that category that the LRA will set the threshold, and it will be in the law. They will set the threshold that above this threshold you register for VAT. Below this threshold, they will have to use other tax collection methods. There's a tax collection method, for instance, they call the presumptive tax. That is, you just go and look at somebody that's selling small shop on Camp Johnson Road, and you just look at A and look at the goods and the goods that is there and say, I presume that this is the profit you make at the end of the year, and therefore I tax you on that presumption. So on the issue of seeing VAT in the market, you won't see it because those people who are trading there fall below the VAT threshold. This is just a point I want to make. And
but
on the one second, on the issue of the law that Mr. Tamba is talking about, this is why the president has requested the legislature to amend Chapter 10 of the Revenue Code. So that is a legislative action. When the amendment goes through, then VAT becomes a law, and therefore the Ministry of Finance and LRA can impose it. But it will have a threshold, and then it will have a rate that they will
Okay.
use to import to administer the tax.
and you guys see the biggest problem I have with this, and this is why I know you guys probably dealt with these things, and it's maybe for someone on the outside looking in and see there's so much you cannot leave taxes to be determined by presumption. It's not fair to somebody where you can just come in and say, oh, I look at this business here, I'm going to determine this is the kind of tax you're going to, that we're going to be imposing on that business, right? My question to both of you and Tamba, at the point of import, right? If I bring rice into the country, let's say you charge me 10%, does that still transfer when I sell that rice to, I still pay the additional 10% when I resell that rice? Or is it different based on
Yeah.
the resale
Yes.
value,
Yes.
right?
If you bring the rice into Freeport, you pay a tax on the which you will pass on to the wholesaler. Yes.
No, I'm
And the
aware of that.
wholesaler, the wholesaler in turn will pass it on to the retail
So that's
seller.
what I'm saying. The percentage across the board is the same, or is
That,
it
Yeah,
varies?
yeah.
that
Okay,
percentage is determined by the government financial authority. In this case, I'm sure there is a structure. There's a
right.
structure. There's a structure by the Liberian Revenue Authority and the Minister of Finance and Planning. I'm sure they have a structure which will determine as to what percentage of your goods that you brought in will be taxed as such.
So and this is maybe we will get to that later. And this is why I had a problem with the VAT. If that is the case, why can't we make changes in the revenue code to make it broad based? So okay, you bring in rev, bags of rice at 10%. When you sell it, the buyer from that will also pay 10% that you're going to collect and send to the government. And if the person's going, who's buying that rice to going to go sell it to Douala, maybe per cups or whatever, let's say the buy things, they're also going to be paying 10%, as opposed to say, okay, you pay 10% to bring it in at the port. When you resell it, we charge you another 10%. The person who's going to do the let's say final sale of the rice, and depending on the size of the business, we can determine whether they should pay that 10%, or we're going to come in and say and determine whether it's not even feasible for them to be paying taxes at all. That is the fact that we're leaving this to discretion. It leaves a lot of rooms for corruption, as in the country. And I think
What we leave it to discretion,
No, no,
the presumptive part of it.
no. Let
Currently,
me, Gabriel.
currently there's a presumptive part, right?
No,
And
Gabriel.
we
Let me
can we agree?
no. Let me just clarify. The issue of presumptive taxes is a remedy to a solution that the tax authority cannot solve.
Mhm.
In a formal economy, every time you have a business, you are required to keep a record of your business, your sales, your revenue, your cost. So you open a shop on Bush Road Island, right? You register that business. The expectation is that you keep a record of account of your business
So
trans. No, one second,
Sales.
one
right.
second. You keep a record of count of your business transaction. It will be that transaction upon which the revenue authority can determine how you pay your tax. But if because in our country, many of the businesses are informal, and it's not only Liberia, it's across the whole developing world. It's a major problem in the entire Africa. Businesses don't have records. So this is where the presumptive tax come in. It's not that you come in, look at one small shop and say your tax is 1
No.
million. No. But you look at the size of the business based on the idea of those who are keeping record that will have that same size. Then you will say, okay, your tax this year will be maybe $150. You pay, or per month you will pay or $50. That's where presumptive tax come in. But presumptive tax is different from VAT. So I'm not,
I'm
I'm
not
not, I'm not saying that I'm saying those who will fall below the VAT threshold, this is where other forms of taxes will have to take over. So I'm saying the introduction of VAT does not say you don't use any other types of taxing. It will still be there. Some will
it
be there.
it will be there. So this is I would say this, Dennis, quickly, and then we'll move on to the next one, right? I understand it will be there. So if you are going to fix a problem that you knew existed, since at least other countries they jump right into the VAT problem when the collection when it was just passed in 1954, we had since 1954 to really study the country that went ahead of us to adopt this. In this case, as a revenue code that we have, and you know that this problem exists, would you not rather resolve the collection method as part of this change here instead of just doing something a quick fix where you're still left with the same problem that existed since 1954? That's what I would do, right? If you're going to fix a problem, you look at it, you look study the country
Fix,
that have gone
fix. Okay, let me fix which problem, Gabriel?
fix the presumptive part of it. So in this case, you will
The
not just
VAT is not intended to fix that presumptive part. That's not what the VAT is addressing.
it's supposed to do that. That's what I'm trying to say. That's what it's supposed to do. If you had other problem that existed, you fix your revenue collection code. In that case, you
No,
make company.
the
Let me
VAT
say
is
this quickly.
addressing a different problem, and
It
that's
is
what I wanted to come to next.
right. That's what I'm saying. It's addressing a different problem, but you're leaving the same problem. You're leaving other problem there that the GST had, right? And you're bringing another tax problem there
I,
while still leaving the fundamental problem that this thing should have addressed. That's what I'm
I
trying to
think
say.
Gabriel is bringing in completely a new phenomena here. I think Gabriel emphasis here is mechanism, collection mechanism, and that is a completely another thing.
It
What are the instrument in place to enforce the collection mechanism by government? That
not just
maybe
the collection
Thomas can speak
mechanism.
to that. Thomas can speak to that. You
Not
know, I
just the
think
collection mechanism, right? But the fact that if you, what's the point if you don't fix your collection mechanism, but you just pass in another law in addition to another one? You're replacing one thing to another, but you're not fixing the key component of collecting on that, but you're just making a law. That's the point that I'm trying to say here. In this case, you create a tax code that will make it efficient to collect on those, right? But you just come and pass a law, you're taking GST and replacing it with VAT. VAT is continuous, which we understand that, without fixing the key, the fundamental things that would have resolved you collecting more revenue. It becomes a problems on top of another problem. You're just replacing one problem on top of another one. That's what I'm trying to say here.
yeah.
Yeah.
In my view,
Right.
this is a main reason why the international organization take advantage of us, because they know that structurally we are not there. Technology wise, we are not there. Collection mechanisms, we are not there. So what the World Bank of the world will come in and introduce a structure that we have to swallow. As better as it may be, we swallow it because we don't have the know-how on our own. And that's the problem. I'm sure Thomas will speak to that.
Right, but
Yeah,
I don't want us to.
I don't. No,
Hold on,
but
Thomas.
Dennis,
Hold on, Thomas. I don't want us to get buried in this because actually, I really want to know what this VAT is, and then when we get to VAT, then we
Yeah, let's
kind of
go into that. We'll come into the
then we
technical part
compare
of
the
it.
two.
Right.
Okay, because the
no,
presumptive
but
tax.
before we go forward, I mean, there are people. I mean, we have the audience; they are listening, right? We have to disentangle these things so that we don't just say, okay, there's a problem, they are not solving it, they are simply just introducing one law to replace the other. That's not the case.
That is true.
No, one second, Gabriel, 1 second. When I mentioned 1954, I didn't mean 1954 was the time Liberia passed a VAT law or 19.
We did not. I know that.
1 second, yeah. 1954 was the time VAT, France was the first country that started this approach to taxes. That was when they started. So it's from 1964 till now that other countries have adopted it because of the revenue potential that it has. But not everything that works well in the developed country works well in the developing countries.
That's correct.
So every country that is adopting VAT in Africa has this limitation of informality. Because we have people technically that are running businesses in our country that don't even know book. They know they can check the money, but to say they will open a book of accounting and record their transactions, they are not able to do it. So this is why you don't include that into the VAT system. You just leave them out and include those who fall within the threshold. So gradually, as the economy grows and formalization increases, the businesses enter the formal sector and they reach the threshold, then they graduate into VAT. So this is not something to say, okay, we are changing the law because we see maybe other people changing it or the World Bank push it through our throat. This is a problem that we have with the state of development in our country. And therefore, we cannot say that since we don't have a 100% formal economy, we cannot introduce VAT.
Dennis, let's go on to the next one. We'll come back to this.
What is VAT and how is it different from GST? What benefit does it bring? Because our government look at it and say, this is good, let's go to it. It's good. It has the potential of raising more revenue. So let's discuss VAT. Because to me, not knowing what it is like they're all the same. Because you are still collecting tax at different points. With VAT, maybe it's so pronounced. And one example somebody gave me, I was researching, is hey, when you buy a car, you're going to pay tax on it. Now, when the car spoils, you take it to the mechanic, you're going to pay tax on that service.
Yep.
And another day, when you go for oil change, you pay another tax. So you keep paying taxes on the same car over and over.
Yep.
So, Mr. Tamba, let me start with you there. What is VAT? How is it different from GST?
Well, you just defined VAT. So those different services that are added onto the product that you already purchased is basically the theoretical and practical definition of VAT.
Oh, but
you already defined it.
You're right.
Basically, that is it. You know, when you buy a car, you take it to the mechanic and you pay taxes on those the value that you add.
So who send it back to the government?
How you see the
how
business
is that
owner?
collected?
Okay, the business owner is the one who collects this from the person to whom the service is provided. And that business owner then will pass it on to the guy who changes oil on Randall Street will pay taxes to the government, and the person who sold the oil to the guy who owns the oil change place on Randall Street will pay. That's how it is collected from one sector to another sector. In my view, that's how it is collected. Now, the service that is provided for this guy, the guy who changed the brakes for you on Broad Street, or let's say Macklin Street, he will then pay his share of it. His business will pay a tax that is levied on him by the Minister of Finance. That's how it is collected. In this case, the point of sale, that means the person who owns the car, the person whose car tire they change, will not be in the picture, because the person who provided the services will pay the taxes for that value that is added onto his car.
Thank you. So when they were introducing this, this is what they said. When introduced, VAT will broaden the tax base, make the tax system neutral and efficient. This regime will make export more price competitive at different stages of the VAT. Production processes under valuation and smuggling will be less attractive and more difficult, which will help generate more revenue. Not only other taxes, including import duty, excise, and income tax, value-added tax is considered the most revenue productive and buoyant tax, which is currently generating about 6% of GDP in many developing countries, compared to less than 3% of GDP generated by GST.
GST.
Thomas, is this true, or they're just trying to lie to us?
That's supply chain. They just, they just explaining what how the goods go through supply chain and the different taxes that are levied as it goes through the supply chain. That's basically why it is.
This looks like too much tax to me. Is it not?
So, in the tax collection world, VAT is often, when you do any training around taxation, VAT is like a gold mine for tax collection. It generates more revenue, but what they put in the release there, none of it can be contradicted if you follow this sector, right? Buoyancy is the responsiveness of taxes to growth. That means when the economy is growing, our tax revenue should also grow. So we say we have a buoyant tax system. Because there are instances where the economy will grow, but tax revenue does not grow because you are not collecting taxes from where you're supposed to be collecting it. Right? There might be sectors that will be growing, but you are not taxing them. So VAT helps with that. We have spoken earlier about the issue of the single stage with the GST. You might be missing out on some taxes that you're supposed to have collected along the value chain that you did not collect. So the way the VAT work is, like I said earlier, every little value that you add, like the fish, the fishermen that can go to the ocean to fish, they bring the fish. Then you collect the fish from them. Say, for instance, they bring the fish, they sell it to you $200. Their value that they have added is $200. Let's say they didn't pay anything. The government maybe am giving them the boat, the net, and everything. They bring the fish $200. They sell it to you. You go and reserve it for 2-3 days, and you sell it to the wholesaler, or you are the wholesaler. You sell it for $400. You bought it from them for $200. You sell it $400. So the value you added is the 400 minus the 200. You added $200. So if the government taxes you, let's say 10%, out of $200, you are paying $20. Then you go to the retailer now, you sell it $600, you pay $400, you added $200. So it will be another 10%. So this is how the tax is collected along that value chain. Every time you add value, it's collected. But in the end, it's actually the consumer that is going to pay. When they say it's neutral, in the sense that when we introduce VAT and we say everybody that is above this threshold, they are going to pay, that means it's not going to affect economic activities. I'm paying the tax, you paying it, Gabriel paying it, Mr. Tamba is paying it. So it really doesn't affect economic decisions that we make. Because if you are not paying the tax, I'm paying, I might change my economic activity. So yes, it contributes to buoyancy. It will contribute to increasing revenue. It will contribute to accountability. That means anybody that is within that value chain, and even people who are in the underground economy that are doing illegal things, if they anytime they interact with the formal economy, they will pay taxes because it will be collected from them at any point that they enter. So this is how VAT is much more in terms of revenue collection, it collects a little more than GST. That's why you see them saying that in other countries it's collecting 6% of GDP. Tax to GDP ratio is around 6%, and in Liberia is 3%. So definitely when we introduce it, we collect a little more, but also the point of the additional revenue comes from the rate, because implementing VAT itself is costly. You have to bring in technology to make sure that those people who are above the threshold who are transacting, you have these electronic invoices that they have to
Yeah,
produce.
and that's the collection part, because I don't know
That's
along the
exactly
value
what I was saying
along
earlier.
That,
the value chain,
that's
how do you collect it?
yeah,
Exactly what I
that's
was saying.
collection mechanism. That's what I was talking
Here when
about.
I go and swipe my card in the thrift store, the tax
You'll fix
is
it.
there, it's electronic. But for our manual system, how are we going to collect the tax at every?
This is what is going to happen when the VAT is introduced. If you read the release carefully and the information that been coming out, the Ministry of Finance even sent a team to Rwanda to do this study tour. The reason why the VAT rate, like I said, is normally 12 to 18% is that the cost of implementing VAT itself is normally 6% of that 12%. It has a high cost of implementation. So if you just say 10%, 6% goes to cost, then you're collecting only 4% in revenue. So it will have to be when they introduce either 12 or 13 or 14%. So the way it is done is that under the electronic invoicing, when Gabriel sells anything to me, he has a record that he will submit to LRA that I bought this item from Thomas and I pay a tax of 10% to him. Then when I sell it to you, Dennis, you also send a record to LRA and I send a record to LRA. The place where it improves accountability is that LRA has two records of the transaction from the seller and the buyer. So nobody can inflate or decrease their tax revenue. Because when you change it without my notice, it will affect how much revenue or how much tax I'm going to pay. If I change it without your notice, it will affect you. So it brings accountability. Everybody is accountable in that digitized system.
Right.
Dennis,
What
this
country
VAT,
does the buyers send receipt to a government? Why would a buyer want to send receipt to a government? Like you go to the store, buy something, why would you want to send a receipt to the government?
You are not the one sending the
no,
receipt.
the seller
It's the person who sold it to
who
you.
sold it to you is the
I
one who
know
sent
that's
it
what
to
I'm
the
saying. So
government.
you said there's two receipts that are going to the government.
Yes.
I'm trying to understand which of
Because
which.
VAT is collected along a value chain. You have not still produced the final product.
Mhm.
So I buy an import from you. Say I'm selling a pepper color. When I buy the flour from you to produce the pepper color, I
You
will
pay
have to,
tax.
yes. So the
Yeah.
tax is paid at
I
that
would
point.
send that tax
Right,
10% to the government.
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
And then
In my view,
the person
Wait,
who
wait, wait. Let him
one
explain,
second.
please.
The
Right.
person who also imported the flour, he has a record. Then the person who bought the flour has a record. But the person who's going to produce the pepper color will be the final point to when that transaction takes place with the retailer collects that. But when you buy the pepper color, you pay, and it's through the retailer. So what I'm saying is that every transactions that take place along the value chain, there are two records that go to the revenue entity. That way, accountability is set within the system, so nobody can change anything.
Right. All right. Let me ask
Let
this
me
way, because
let me. I
this
let
looks
wanted to
me
like,
add
I
that.
wanted to make this point here, Dennis. And I think it goes back to exactly what I was saying earlier. And I think sometimes we is a way we do things in, I don't know, in a country or whatever it is. We don't fix the causes of things. We just implement them without fundamentally fixing them. Now, if you look at that on the broad, from a theoretical standpoint, where like Thomas and uh, the doc I just explained here, right? You look at that and you would think this is it. We should have had a long time, right? From a theoretical standpoint. But the collection problem, there is still fundamentally. Now, I'm not going to say there won't be an increase from the 3% between to maybe edge up to 4 or even 5%. There will be, but that happening, in order for that to happen, from a fundamental standpoint, you have to improve the collection problem. You bring a used car in the country and charge me 10, let's say I pay 10,000, you charge me 1,000 to import that car. I resell that car, somebody, you know, something breaks on that car, I fix that car for $1,000, you charge me another $100, right? Continuously, it would be a burden on me. Currently, there isn't. The only taxes that I pay was when the car was brought in and when I bought it. Going forward, there will be a continuous tax every time I service that vehicle. Those are things we didn't even take into a consideration on the consumer part. I know we kind of use the term broad base. We left that part. I won't deal with that part. Maybe we'll talk about them later on, the cost on the consumer side. The biggest part that I worried about is you are now going to entrust the mechanic shop to continually, every time you Thomas bring your car to that shop, to collect that tax and send it to the government. Now, it's from a collection standpoint, that is, hey, from a revenue standpoint, that is beauty. That is a gold mine that the government can tap into. But what is incentives for currently for somebody who isn't doing that to continue to do that? Is that part of the implementation cost you're talking about, that you're going to incentivize this person now to collect the tax on behalf of the government to remit that to the government continuously for something that he wasn't doing right now, right? So those are some of the things that I talk about when I talk about theoretical, narrative. But if you look at the practical implementation standpoint, and from the collection person who's going to collect those taxes continuously, and also the person who's going to be paying that taxes that they weren't paying now, you have to know there's going to be a limitation on there. The problem here that I have is, how do you resolve that? How do you solve for that to make sure that you go from this 3% that GST is giving you to the 6% that the VAT is promising? That's the fundamental problem that I have with this whole system here. I don't think we thought it through. We just implement it because it sounds fancy, and we look at it as it seems like a gold mine theoretically, but from a practical standpoint, I don't think the government has thought it through.
Yeah. And before you come into, what are the issues that you think VAT has, Gabriel?
I think for me, it's one of the things that I mentioned. One is the customer standpoint. Imagine somebody in the government. I mean, typical Liberian. You have your car. You only pay for it. You bring it to the shop. All you pay for is the service that's produced on it. Nobody asks you for additional tasks.
So now you are saying the problem, the consumer is going to pay more.
It's going to pay more. Now, all of a sudden, if I'm going out, you're going to be charging me more because the government is now pressuring you as a mechanic to collect from me. So you're going to come pressure me now, right? That's a cost on my end. The other part is your collection of that taxes. There's a high probability you could force me to pay that tax, and without remitting that to the government, how is the government going to resolve for that? Are they going to now give everybody electronic system to make sure that when they go to pay, when I go pay to you, that you collect it electronically? What if I bring cash? How do you solve for that, right?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thomas, you want to come in?
Yeah, I mean, Gabriel is presenting a scenario like, if you have a car in Liberia and you go for servicing, you only pay tax once, and when you go back, they don't collect tax from you again. No. This is why we have the goods and service tax. Every time you go for a service, you carry your car to a mechanic shop, you go there today, you are paying that service that is part of the GST. You go there tomorrow, when it's spoiled again, you will pay, because the people are delivering services to you and they are making income. And the fundamental reasoning behind collecting taxes is, when you make income, you give a portion of that income to the government. So the increment in taxes that will be collected will not necessarily come from the fact that under VAT, every time you carry your car now, you will pay, and under GST, you will not pay. No. The increment will come from the rate, like I was saying. Because of the cost of VAT, the rate will go up. and that means people will have to pay slightly higher. So this is one thing I even have a problem with the government. As the president is sending the law to the legislature, they should be informing the citizens that VAT is going to bring a one-time increase in prices of goods and services. Because once the rate goes up, then the prices of goods and services will go up one time.
All right. Let me take this scenario, because as I'm listening to you guys, I'm thinking, okay, this will be able to work in Monrovia.
That's another
Outside,
problem.
let's say even Todi, where you go and these guys are behind the mountains of coal, and you go and buy coal from them, right? In Todi, how they going to how they going to transmit that tax to government?
So
And then when you get outside of Todi, you go to my home where it's like not much economic activity in Grand Cru or in Sino or River G. How is the VAT system going to work there? And
Percy,
how is it
Percy,
going to generate or be the gold mine that you talk about?
Percy and I were talking about this before we even came on air. Like we had a 30 minutes conversation. Like sometimes again, this is the one of the problems I mentioned earlier, that we don't think things through. We take these recommendations without studying, without doing our own feasibility or cost benefit analysis study to what are how is that going to work. If it works in as per, I will give credit to him as it work just because it works in Monrovia, as Percy would say, doesn't mean it's going to work all across the other counties. How do you factor in? Yes, from a theoretical standpoint, you implement VAT. Yes, people in Monrovia can afford that. Like Monrovia, even in Nimba or even Grand Cape Mount or Mangibi. But beyond that, what are we going to just relegate that to say, okay, those people, other country, I mean, counties, they only operate as a, in the informal sector. So we're not, VAS is not concerned with that, right? So again, it goes back to my fundamental problem or issue with the implementation is you didn't solve for the fundamental problem that you needed to solve. You just implement something without solving for the collection problem. You implement something without solving for how do we make sure that if we implement this, it doesn't just work in Monrovia, but it works in all the other 15 or 14 counties that exist, right? And we make sure that it can take us from this 3% to the 6%, stuff like that. Those are some of the things we're supposed to consider. Besides it being a burden on the consumer, and I don't think the
Gabriel,
cost.
maybe they consider it. Let's Thomas have to write this.
That's I want to learn. That's what I'm here. I'm challenging. As I said, I'm from the outside.
Let me.
I'm on the
I
sure.
outside.
wanted to.
All
I
right,
wanted
let
to.
Thomas go first, and then Thomas will come in.
I wanted to buttress Gabriel's point. Apart from the mechanism, the collection mechanism, which both of us agree, what about our development level compared to other countries? Our development status? Do we have the know-how? Do we even have the know-how equal to Sierra Leone? What about Nigeria? So introducing something of this nature, when we are so primitive, I hate to use that word, but we are so primitive in so many respects. To introduce something of this nature, I think the government presumption here is VAT is a tax that will set a level playing field for everybody to participate. It works in Nigeria. Can we get it to work in Liberia, given our structure, given our collection mechanism? Can it work? So Gabriel is right. Have we been able to answer these questions before even introducing this sort of tax? Mm-hmm. So I agree with Gabriel on this point. Are we prepared?
Mm-hmm.
I want to hear from Thomas. I want to hear what
Liberia is this country who always you want to move forward, but you are not prepared for anything.
No.
1 second. No, I'm not saying you. I'm saying this is the way we behave as a country. Every time you go to Liberia, you talk about something. They say, "Oh, Liberia stay way behind. We can't do that. We can't do that." I mean, Sierra Leone has a capacity, maybe human capital, they might be slightly above us, but we also do have capacity, right? Like I said, This is since 2009. If you see the number of trainings that LRA, Ministry of Finance people have gone through on VAT, it has been a lot of years. Even back in 2020, before I left, 2022, before I left Liberia, the introduction of VAT was not, the delay in the introduction of VAT was not because of technical capacity. It was because of a political decision. The politicians at the top had not agreed that it be introduced. But the point on which I agree with Gabriel on is that some of the challenges that we will face will be on the electricity side, for instance. Because if you want people to produce electronic
Receipt.
receipts and invoices and send it to the LRA, then one, they need electricity to be able to do that. Two, they need internet to be able to do that. So if electricity is going to be a problem where the country has electricity for only 2 hours in a day, then you have a problem with the operationalization of the system because VAT is extremely digital. And this is why quite recently, through I think an African Development Bank, they introduced the a digital system in LRA. So on the side of electricity, on the side of internet, that will be a challenge. On the issue of how prepared we are for it, this is where all of those technical issues will be addressed at the level of the threshold. You migrate people who you think have the capacity because we have a lot of big businesses in Liberia. The Metastases of this world are there. The
Jungle Power.
Jungle Power are there. The company that is producing beer, they are there. Coca-Cola is there. So those businesses you introduce, you migrate them to VAT, and then as you expand VAT threshold, anytime you reduce the threshold, you include people in it.
So you're saying you can run hybrid, right? Because those
That's
who
what
are
I said earlier. That's what I said earlier. When you develop when you set the threshold, we say anybody that is making $2 or let's say $10 million in revenue, 10 million Liberian dollar in revenue, or maybe $1 million in revenue in US dollar, you will move on to VAT. The other people will still continue to use the existing system when we introduce it maybe this year. Next year, we increase the number. So gradually, as we are developing, more people are entering the VAT net or threshold, and then we can move on from there. And this is generally why you do a development. You start small and you move up. But to say we are going to sit down for the entire economy to be formalized, for everybody to start keeping record, for everybody to have access to electricity, then we're not introduce it. That's just
Thomas, we are not suggesting that, or at least I'm not
And
suggesting that.
Thomas, I was talking about the guy who sell coal in Todi, right? He makes very good amount of money.
Yes, he makes very good amount of money, right? That's where if he falls within the threshold and he's making a lot of money, then the LRA registers him for
Right.
VAT.
And take the
So-
It doesn't matter where he is. LRA
Here's the-
currently has the record of all the taxpayers in the country. So once they set the threshold, they will know, even if you are in Maryland, depending on how much revenue you are making, there are businesses that are in Nimba that are making more revenue than people in Monrovia.
Here's the point that I was
but
making.
Thomas, we are not suggesting, or at least I'm not suggesting that the economy has to reach to certain status before we can introduce this sort of a tax. My problem is fundamental preparation for something of this nature. Have we done that, or are we going to do that? I mean, it's just a yes or no answer.
No, okay. Let me no, John, 1 second. On
maybe
the
you
issue
can
of
add-
capacity, the capacity is in the revenue authority to administer it. Where I will agree with you is on the payment side, on the compliance side. Because I said earlier that as the president was submitting the bill to the legislature to amend the law, he should have equally be informing the population that this is something we are going to do. It might increase the tax rate. You might see that in the next 2 months, you will be paying additional taxes and your requirement will be to comply with it. This is what you need to do so that people can start to prepare for it. Because
I don't think, in addition, I don't think they have mentioned the repercussions for not paying.
That's the point that I was making.
No,
So I agree with
this. Even the what I was using here, this is they've been. This is from the LRA website. I think this was a couple of years ago. So they've been they've been talking about this, and I don't think they've been sitting down. They've been kind of training people, right? So maybe we are looking at this release for the first time, but it doesn't mean this is the first time that they are saying it. Maybe we have not been following. I want us
Here's
to move on to one question I have is economic activity, right? Because the whole idea of taxes is people, their economic activities, let's say unemployment, all these things. So if the people are not making income, if people are not making money to buy all these goods and services that we talk about, wouldn't it be fair to tackle those other areas first before introducing these kind of things? Because the whole idea, yes, VAT is a gold mine, but if the people are not working, nothing, no economic activities going on in these areas, we still be at the same point, don't you think?
and again, it goes back to what I continue to say, and I will sound like a broken record here, is whether we took our time to look at the cost benefits analysis. Those are some of the things that I was talking about. When I was saying whether we took our time to do the cost benefit analysis, it's not about, you know, you know, in a general sense, but once the impact on your citizens, the economy, you know, here's something that we often don't do, right? The beauty of other people going ahead of you is that you look at their mistakes and their success stories, and you can learn from both. We have countries that have adopted this VAT system. We could have learned a lot from them in terms of what are some of the challenges that they had, and in those that learning process, we could have improved. Oh, perfect. When Dennis mentioned that when Ghana implemented the VAT system, there was these articles of, because people didn't understand it, right? How do you ease the optics from on the citizen? We could have thought about that. How do we put out more in terms of communicate that to the citizens, right? So they understand this is not just a one-time tax. This is a continuance. This is why they use the euphemism word broad base. But broad base doesn't mean it's just a one time. Is continue the word they should have used, which they could have explained more and allow people to understand, is continuous, is ongoing, right? Every time you purchase something, there will be a value added tax on it. But to go back to what Dennis was saying in terms of the economic aspect, and this is why I think this, and I understand where they're coming from too. They're strapped. They put out a budget. They're shortfall, and they may not be able to get to it. So anything right now to make it seem as if they're going to do something, but they should have thought about how is that going to impact.
That's a political.
No, 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 no. I'm not being
Because
political.
that started a long time, right? Before now.
It should have, but this right. Just because the other administration started doesn't mean you just come and jump into it and implement it. This is
Maybe
your
all those formalities have been done. We don't.
guys.
And
Let,
Gabriel, what I
let
want
me
you to
land.
do
Let me
is
land. Let me
what I want
land.
you to do is if you can point out something like give a very good example. Say, well, we should learn from people that have done it. So if you can help us, have you studied what the other people who did it, what their challenges are, and how we're going to overcome? Is there something that you've looked at?
Let me I look at Ghana a little bit. I looked at Ghana a little bit, and
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I went too
I
much
look at
in
Ghana as
details
well.
about that, right?
Yeah.
Ghana's right now it's ongoing.
Sierra
Matter of
Leone.
fact, to this point, it is not still enough that they're implementing new taxes, right? And because again, they're in an economic challenging situation, right? Now, in terms of the adaptation, what they did, they merged, they had different, well, I think the beauty, the good thing at Ghana, they had different tax systems. So they merged it into one called the Ghana Revenue Authority, right? So they had the export, they had income and all these other ones separated. So with the VAT, they merge everything into one, right? To make it seamless, right? That was the beauty that they've done. But I think when I said there are other countries that went before us that we could have learned from, is that yes, maybe Ghana did what they could do, but they didn't really learn what they needed to learn. We could have studied them and said, if they made these mistakes, how do we do it even better than what they've done?
Mm-hmm.
Right? How do we do
I'm
it
saying
even
maybe
better?
they did that. So
Right?
can you point to something that tell us that they didn't do it?
What do you what from what I'm looking at? I've already did, Dennis.
No.
I've
Okay.
already did the collection process
Dennis,
of it. right?
Dennis,
Ghana didn't get the collection process right. We too fall in the same
uh,
pitfall of
No, no,
not
no.
not no. Let me finish.
what
We
about the fact that taxes are collected from the masses, the people of the country? What about the unemployment rate? How many people do we have employed compared to Ghana in terms of percentage? What is our unemployment rate? If you answer
Are you
those
saying
questions,
we should
because
wait until we get to what 10% unemployment before we do it?
no, not wait, not wait until we get to 10% employment. But because we don't have enough economic activity, and mind you, taxes are nothing but revenue generated from economic activity.
correct.
Revenue generated from economic activity. If you don't have full employment or something that look good in terms of employment, you don't expect to collect from anybody who is not working or who is not buying. So if we look at that part, I mean, I'm stand to be corrected. So maybe you are right. They may
I
have
wanted to
visited all these part. But what is
Thank,
our unemployment rate compared to Ghana? How do they
thank,
approach the
thank you.
situation?
We got
Investment.
15 minutes.
Yeah, Daniel,
What
let
the
me
atmosphere
Daniel,
for investment? Are we
We got
creating?
15 minutes to close. We
yeah,
have 15 minutes to close. Let me announce 605-313-6004. The code is 791-403 #. That's the number to call if you want to join the conversation. Let me welcome Percy Harris. He's Percy, welcome.
I'm so sorry, Dennis. Fatherhood is something else.
always late.
I
Yeah,
apologize.
you should celebrate it. It's a
I,
good thing.
I had to go do something else, but I was
No,
following the
no problem.
conversation. I was following the conversation, and I appreciate everything the panelists here are saying. Um, the point I will make here is this couple of things I think Mr. What's the gentleman in the background just made. Um, what I mean, that Ghana, I came here at a conversation about Ghana. What Ghana have done a lot in the last couple of years in terms of deepening her economy, getting her citizen integrated into the economy and
Mhm.
stuff like that. So Ghana can afford to do something like a VAT. I'm not saying we shouldn't do it, but I think we should be very cognizant about the kind of country we got, and to use these cookie cutter methods that actually just come from these international organizations without taking into consideration the idiosyncrasies of Liberia as it is right now. If you did VAT right now in the country, what you're gonna do is you're gonna probably kill all the restaurants there in town, all the small entertainment spots. You're probably gonna kill them right now. That's exactly. I mean, I'm just talking about Monrovia. I'm not talking about my people in the interior, because our people in the interior ain't get time for VAT. They don't go to restaurant or eat. You're not their services are not the same as the people in the urban area, right? So, but basically, what you're gonna do, you're gonna stop people from going out to eat. You're gonna kill restaurants. You're gonna kill these businesses that are service oriented. Then people will start to find alternative, right? Because you
Meaning
adding cost of you adding
the
come
prices
again.
of food in the restaurant will go up. That's why we'll kill it. Is that what you're saying?
Basically, that's what's going to happen. People are going to start eating home, right? If you increase taxes, the alternative for me going to the restaurant is to sit down to my home and eat the food I got there instead of going out and stimulating the economy with
Primary shop.
and with the money that I have and stuff like that, generating other employment for people. There will be a cost to this thing, and people, we shouldn't take it for a joke. Like my thing is, yeah, the VAT probably could work for the people in and around Monrovia, maybe Montserrat. As you move away from the urban centers, you go into the rural area. This thing, our people, it doesn't work for our people. So you have to let these places come up with their own organic economic activity and then raise their revenue based on that. Basically, I'm calling for decentralization. The people in Monrovia cannot continue to decree these cookie cutter policies and expect it to just shove down the throat of our people in the interior or that are not around in and around Montserrat or stuff like that. You have to do these things methodically. Like right now, it's supposed to be something that okay, Montserrat have these kind of things going on there. Yeah, VAT makes sense for us to generate more revenue in terms of where we are in Montserrat. People can afford that, right? Maybe the people in Monrovia can afford that, but they're giving a level of poverty that when you move away from Monrovia, that is down, that's in the other parts of the country, this cannot be a national policy. It shouldn't be a national policy, matter of fact, right?
Thank
The central government the national government should not be the one collecting VAT. They should be at the local level. That determination should be made at the counties and whatnot. And when let the counties say whether or not they want VAT or they want to stick with the GST stuff that they got going on. But our people should have alternative. It shouldn't be this centralized one size fit all kind of stuff that we have ran the country on for the last 178 years. It just doesn't make sense.
Or are you suggesting that if that VAT is collected in Cape Mount, it should go to Cape Mount instead of coming to Monrovia? Is that
Yeah,
what
it should go to Cape Mount. It should go to the county level in Cape Mount. Then Cape Mount will use their money to do whatever
that's a
development they want to do with it.
Thomas like that, but that's a different conversation.
No, I mean,
Someone likes that, but as a practitioner, I don't think he
yeah,
endorses.
so there are different things here. You see, for instance, the reason why the US up to now has not agreed to introduce VAT is the complication that comes with decentralization. Because you see, VAT, like we keep saying, is you collect the taxes along the value chain. So if somebody produces something in North Carolina and it ends up being sold in Florida, and you are expecting Florida to collect the revenue at the point of sale, for instance, and feed it back through the value chain, so that the person who contributed to the manufacturing of it in North Carolina can get it. It's very complicated. So to say that VAT will be collected by local government, it becomes very difficult because there has to be this transfer system among the local governments. India tried it. They introduced VAT. They had to abandon it because of that decentralized system to go back to GST, because GST is just final stage. So VAT is often collected at the national level. We have a law in place for revenue sharing, taxes that will be collected at the local level, property taxes, business fees, business registration, all of them are in place. But if we give VAT to subnational government, we have a problem. On the issue
my
of
point to you, Tom, my argument, my counter argument to that point you just made also is that the kind of economic activity that is generated in Monrovia is not the same that is in other parts of the country, right?
that's not an argument. That's
Yeah,
a
but
fact.
what I'm saying is you will be unintentionally burdening people that have no intentions whatsoever of even being burdened, right? The guy like I told you, the places I visited, that guy ain't got nothing thinking about VAT, the kind of activity that the economic activity that goes on there. It's not what why are you gonna be burdening the guy with VAT business for the men selling coke? You know what kind of VAT? The people ain't got the VAT is a consumption tax, right? So people in the more affluent area, like when you go to New York City and other places, then here they go to restaurants. And, you know, those are the kind of the economic generation. So, but people in other parts, we have to treat like we can treat Liberia like this one size fits all thing. Like people like Monrovia and Montserrat is Liberia. There are other parts of the country that people does not even. The things that you guys talk about in Monrovia doesn't even apply to them because their way of life or their cost of living, whatever else that they are tethered to, is not even the same as the people in the urban center. So we have to treat this country as like a unit. We have to decentralize it and give people the latitude to do what they need to do, and then develop organically.
Thank you. We're going to close very soon because we want to keep this under 1 hour 30 minutes. If you said that, Percy, if you are correct, then it means they were not even paying GST. So GST,
probably
VAT,
Probably not.
Right. And then so if they are not paying GST, if they won't pay VAT, so as we'll say on the account, which one be their concern?
No,
so
but
here's
the thing. The concern then is this missed revenue. You're not that's the question. Just like bro, we've been having a conversation about integration. How do we integrate the general population into the system wherein we can increase our economic activity by that, increase revenue by that, and improve development? That's what you need to do. You have to integrate these people so you can say what won't be your concern. We have to make these people useful to the economy.
What I mean is,
but you are saying something, okay, and I wanted to address this issue, right? The issue of growth, like Mr. Tamba said, I have always argued that tax collection is a function of growth. So our discussion should be more about expanding the economy And once you expand the economy and you improve tax administration, revenue collection becomes just a function.
Dennis made that
It
point
will
earlier.
bring, it will bring. But then the counter argument to it is that you need revenue to expand the economy. So without additional resources, we are just going to be stuck in this budget of we pay salary.
But
and
what
we
you are
don't do-
doing,
One
what
second.
you're doing, you're increasing rate. What I'm arguing for is bringing more people. You bring more people into the pool, you will increase revenue. That's what I'm saying. Not by
He agrees
increasing
with
the rate,
you,
but
but
a
let
few
me
people
finish.
then are already paying it. That's what I'm saying. So let's
He
increase.
agree-
Let's
you guys
increase
are saying
the
the
pool
same
It's the
taxpayer,
function of growth.
and then we
You
can
guys are
increase
saying the
revenue. If
same
you bring
thing
more
here.
people into the pool, more people
Yeah.
paying taxes, revenue will go up. Not by increasing the
Let
returns from a
him finish.
few
We gotta
people.
close very soon. I think he agrees with
Go
me. He
ahead,
says it's a
Connor.
function of
Do
growth.
finish
Go
your
ahead,
thought.
Tom. Learn your point.
That's a function of growth. And when VAT says that we are going to expand the tax base, it's going to ensure that anyone along the value chain where we're not collecting tax, it could be $1, we collect it from there, right? That's already a base that you have increased. Like I said earlier, the people who are burning coal in Todi, say if they are not up to the VAT threshold, they won't be covered by VAT. It's not for them. They will still be, taxes will be collected from them under other mechanisms. The issue of the tax rate that will go up, I said it earlier, the tax rate is eventually going to go up because VAT itself administering it is costly. But a place where it becomes efficient is that everybody going to have that 12% or 1% increase, all the restaurants. So are you going to say as a business, because the tax revenue has gone by 1%, I will not do business? Everybody else is paying.
It was
So
trendless
everybody,
most businesses. It
No,
was
the restaurant business is something
closing.
that is prevalent in Monrovia. The people in Sarala does not go to restaurant. Why are you imposing VAT on them? That's my question. So keep that VAT thing to a particular place where there is an economic, we can generate revenue here because the population size here and the people here are engaged in this particular kind of consumption. So we will increase rates here, and and then people will probably adhere to it. But don't make it general. My point is, don't make it
another point we
general.
need
no,
to
but the
bring
threshold, why you
into
are
this.
saying about the threshold solves that problem? I don't see where you keep going to it. The people who are not within the threshold, they are not bothered by it. The VAT is not, they are not enrolled, it's not collected from them. But if you consume that service, you don't do a tax and focusing and say, because people in Morovia, they go to restaurant, we say we are taxing this service at this level, regardless of where you are, whether you are in Harper, if you consume that service, you pay the tax. That's the way taxation works. So we don't
My-
target it to specific
I think it should be.
location.
My
biggest
point is, I don't think it's
concern.
Thank
that
you,
bad. I think it
gentlemen.
should be
We
gradual. It
gotta
should be
close.
grow up
It's
gradually
Saturday. I
because
don't
people
want to
in
keep
Harbour
you
might
too
not be
long.
wanting
In
to pay
my
12% that the
In
government
my
has
view,
to
there are
pay,
two
right?
issues here.
Okay, hold on.
There are two-
I want us to make our closing comments now. We don't. It's Saturday. We don't want to keep you too long. We have 3 minutes to close. So go
There's
ahead,
so much to
Mr.
talk
Tama.
about this.
Yeah,
But
I
anyways,
said, in my view,
let's
there
wrap
are
up.
two issues here, or two or three issues. Number one, we have to admit that, and I would think Thomas will agree with me, that tax collection is a very expensive undertaking, and that government must be prepared to undertake a venture of this nature. At the beginning, in my view, they will not even, it will be minus. It will not be a plus in terms of collection when it comes to the expenses involved. That's one. The second thing is we have to improve. I can't help but to say it again. We have to improve our economic activity. Without improving or increasing our economic production base, forget about the fine name VAT. We're not going to collect anything, anything, unless we increase our manpower, functionalities, and activities. That's the only way we'll collect. Thirdly, I would think by now they have thought it through as to how they will go about, because from what I see, the presumption here is this VAT will be like a plain level field. Everybody will participate. Everybody will participate in this tax venture. Are we going to see to it that indeed everybody will participate? Are we going to be prepared to make sure that those who are involved in collection are collecting from the people that we serve will collect from? Those are the three issues in my view.
Thank you. Percy.
Just to distill what Mr. Tama had just said, I totally agree. And that's the point I was making about economic activity. By increasing the pool of people, we have to do more in terms of generating economic activity, getting Liberia involved into the economy. When you do that, when you increase your workforce participation and whatnot, then you can say, okay, yeah, okay, we got enough people in the economy working that can afford to pay these various kinds of taxes, whether it be a VAT or GST, whatever it is. So you have more people in the economy, you increase the pool of people, and then you can do the tax level. But my thing is, at the stage is it right now, the government in Monrovia is just saying 12% VAT eventually if it passes now. I mean, I hope our legislator think this through before letting it on, right? As it is, it's not the law of the land yet, but I hope these discussions happen. This kinds of robust discussion will happen in the legislature, right? So people can talk about the differences between the various regions we are talking about. Liberia as a place is not Monrovia. People tend to treat it as Monrovia. I mean, the people in Harper, the VAT might be 12% might be good for the people in Monrovia, but who knows whether the business in Harper will be able to generate 12% in terms of VAT. So these things we have to we have to treat the country as diverse as it is. We have to diversify it in a way that makes sense so that just because it's good for one group of people in a particular locality does not mean that it works or is good for the other people in a particular locality. That's what I'm saying. So it shouldn't be a cookie cutter policy. We should talk about it in a way that it makes sense to the country and the people that reside and are going to be affected by these policies. That's where I'm coming in from.
Gabriel.
Yeah, Dennis, I think there's a lot to discuss on this topic. I wish we had enough time.
We can do it next week.
Yeah, can we? Can we do that?
It's all
Because
up to you.
yeah, there's a part of it that you brought in that's going to be part of my closing argument, which I think we kind of maybe one or two people alluded to that is the stress on the economy. Again, I keep saying this thing here that we should have done our own cost benefits analysis. Yes, you can, if you do that, you're able to determine the kind of stress it will put on the economy from the businesses closing that people because most people are not don't want to pay taxes. They're not going out to businesses to buy stuff anymore, or they're kind of like Pricey said, they're eating more at home. The stress that is going to put on businesses, how much stress that is going to put on the businesses, how long is that going to take us to recover? To say people have now endured that stress and they are now slowly coming back into the economy. How many years or maybe months that's going to take for us to recover? We didn't look at that aspect of it. We broadly stated it's going to take from 3% to raise us to 6%. Well, we stated that as a broad statement without understanding, without even not just understanding, but without even having the collection mechanism in place to make it efficient for us to collect these taxes and put them in the government coffers, right? The other thing that we didn't do is that we didn't look at the impact on the consumers, right? That we didn't explain it to them. We use this big euphemism. This is why I don't like euphemism. If you're saying something to someone, say it to them instead of using euphemism. We use this broad term, broad base, instead of saying this is going to be a continuous tax. Whereas GST is limited, VAT is going to be continuous. But this is why it's benefiting to the government, and this is why we need you to be paying your taxes. We didn't do any of that. We just put this thing out without even doing studies on countries that went ahead of us since 1954. That accompanying countries that have adopted this thing. There are a lot of studies we could have done to understand their pitfalls, their success story, and we could have improved upon that to make it more efficient. We didn't do any of that. We just implemented this thing just because we have a budget shortfall and we need to, choke somebody somewhere to get it out of them. So at the end of the day, we're choking the average Liberian citizen that don't even have money in their pocket to squeeze that little 5 cent out of their pocket that they don't already have. So I think there's a lot to be talked about here, and I hopefully we can do a part 2 on this next Saturday. Thank you.
Thank you. Tom?
It has been a great show. I think it's good in the sense that we could have some questions and doubts about VAT, and this should be part of any policy process. Anytime you are amending a policy or you are bringing a public policy, people should be able to talk about it and raise their concerns and raise their doubts about it. But some of the claims, I just wanted to um, provide some information on them, considering that maybe I was close to folks who were working on this. The issue with Ghana was back in the 1990s, Ghana introduced VAT without a lot of awareness around it. And so people thought it was a new tax, like you said. So in the end, Ghana had to cancel it and then reintroduce it after some years. And it is this thing that Liberia has been afraid of since 2009, that we need to prepare, we need to prepare, we need to prepare. And it has taken us more than 10 years, almost going to 20 years. So I think Liberia has studied a lot. We've gone to other countries, they've read all of these papers. The LRA and the Ministry of Finance, they've done this for almost 20 years to study how VAT should look. On the issue of it being expensive, like Mr. Tamba said, I think I mentioned earlier, VAT is extremely expensive because you can introduce it in an informal system with the way we do paper to paper. It can work. On the issue of it being a minus, I doubt that would be the case because the fact that people who are already paying the GST like 10% for services or currently 11%, if that rate goes to 12%, instead of tax revenue coming down, it will actually increase. And then anyone that falls outside the threshold will still be paying based on what they are paying now. So I don't see tax revenue. There's no government that will introduce a tax reform that will reduce taxes. That won't happen. On the issue of impact on citizens, I agree because consumption taxes generally they are regressive in the sense that you will have poor people paying a larger share of their income because that's what they depend on. People depend on rice and other things. So if you go to the VAT law, for instance, there will be some exemptions. Certain goods, they will say this is exempted. So those will be taken care of. On the issue of collection mechanism, this has been something that the LRA has been working on. I think we do have something in place for that. On expanding the economy, I do agree with it. But in some instances, we need tax revenue to be able to invest in productive sectors of the economy. And this is not something that maybe a development agency just came to Liberia and said, pass it tomorrow. This has been worked on, it's been work in progress. But like I said earlier, I think the consultations that were here were mostly with stakeholders, civil society, people in the government, regional consultations. We need much more broader consultations so that the citizens themselves can be aware of it, so that we don't go the route that Ghana went. So we introduce it and then we have to reverse it again. But I think this is a good start of the discussion. We can move forward to discuss it. Maybe at a certain point, we can even look at the VAT draft law and see what are those things that are in there.
Yeah, let's
you
do a
so much.
part two next Saturday.
I just want to make this point, right?
Thank you so much. We got to close, Percy. I'm sorry. It's Saturday.
Percy and I will agree on decentralization. So that decentralization you raising, I agree with you.
But thank you. We got to close. Thank you, gentlemen. I will give you a Saturday back. I want to thank our viewers for watching, even those who watch it. Continue to share our show. Of late, we have gotten into trouble, maybe with Facebook, or that some people playing wish on us. Nobody can get our notification. So when you see us, please share the show. Go on our videos, click on it, and you click on following, and then you elect to receive notification. Please pass this information to other people. Go on our page also, and you can invite friends, because this is by far the best program you can have in Liberian television anywhere since 1847. And so we want everybody to be a part. So please do that for us. Maybe at the end of this year, we'd like to give Sasewu to the person who's doing this to us. But for now, thank you for watching.
That's some lazy excuses.
We all love you, man.